Hi everybody, I'm Chef Jennifer Basil, and on today's show, we're gonna do some one-pot dishes, but to add a little bit of protein, we're gonna grill some chicken first. It is a windy day here in Texas, but I promise it's not a tornado. It's nice and warm out, even though it's early in spring. I think it's time to start grilling because I love to cook outdoors. We're gonna do some chicken to add to our recipes we're gonna cook today. For our first recipe today, we're going to make gnocchi. And this is similar to a pasta dough. We are going to rice some potato, add flour and egg, and bring that together to make a dough to make our gnocchi. So the first thing we had to do is bake some potatoes. I went ahead and did that already. I did not rub this with oil or season it with salt. We just did it dry. And then you're gonna wanna obviously peel the potato because we only want the fluffy inside. And we're gonna rice it. If you do not own one of these, you should get one. It's called a potato ricer, and we're gonna press the potatoes through this and it's gonna create a really fluffy texture. And by the way, this is the best way to make mashed potatoes too. So just take your potatoes, fill it in the ricer, and then press down. Look at that, perfect fluffiness. And you wanna just keep doing that. You want about 2 pounds of potatoes, so I'm actually going to do what's already peeled and maybe half more of this potato, but we'll get that all riced, and then we will add the flour, egg, and salt, and bring that dough together. Okay, I've got the potatoes riced, and just like pasta, we're gonna make a well. We're gonna add flour, our egg in the center. I'm doing it in a mixing bowl. You could do it on a flat surface just like you would a pasta dough. I'm gonna add in a little salt too. And then you want to bring in the mixture into the egg. And once you kind of have that incorporated, then you can kind of use your hands to bring it all together. And once it's all together, we're gonna roll it out and cut our gnocchi. And then to cook it, we're gonna add it to some salted boiling water. And then we're gonna make a luscious cheese sauce to put it in. Take half the dough. We're gonna roll this out into a long, skinny cylinder. So depending on how large your work surface is, I might have to actually cut this in half again. Let's do that because I need the length of the cutting board. Just kind of roll it out. And you can add a little flour to the surface if you need it. Okay, and then from here, I'm gonna cut it into little pieces and I'll show you how to roll it on the board to get those ridges in the shape of a gnocchi. Okay, we've got our gnocchi dough in our little rolls. Now we're just gonna cut it into bite-sized pieces. And then you could actually just leave it like this and cook it. It would be perfectly fine. But if you want to make the gnocchi look like the way Italians do it, I have this board. And what you would do is you would just, with your thumb, roll the gnocchi down it, and you get those nice ridges on it. Actually, I'm gonna do it this way since I'm facing the camera, or facing you guys at home. And you can kind of see we're getting those ridges. But if I was doing it for myself, I would use my thumb. And you see you kind of get a nice little ridge and a little dent to shape our gnocchi. Once we have them all shaped, we're gonna put them in boiling water. You're gonna cook them till they float, and then we're gonna make a cheese sauce. We'll toss them all together. So think of like a gnocchi mac and cheese. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so good. And then we'll add our grilled chicken to it. Okay, before we actually cook the gnocchi. I wanna get the sauce ready because if we put the gnocchi in and it overcooks, it's gonna get gummy and sticky and it won't be light and fluffy. So let's hold off on that and get our pan sauce ready. I am going to add just a little bit of butter to start, not too much. We're gonna put in some pancetta, which is a cured pork product, but this fat on the pancetta is gonna render down. So that's why I don't wanna add too much butter or oil because we're gonna get the fat from the pancetta already. So we'll put that in and let that kind of crisp up a little bit. And for this cheese sauce, we're doing pancetta. We're gonna add some sage. And you can either chop the sage, or if you wanted to just tear the leaves and kind of make it a rough, like loose cut in your sauce, you could do it that way. I'm gonna actually chop ours. So while that's rendering, let me get that done. Give myself some space here. Oh my gosh, I wish you could smell this. Fresh herbs are just so wonderful. We don't necessarily want this to get bacony crispy. We could if you wanted that texture. I just want to get some of that fat rendered down. You can see it kind of getting translucent. So rendering means to cook the fat down and out of it. Now to make our sauce, I've got cream, butter, Parmesan, a little bit of garlic powder. That we'll use to finish off the dish when we plate it. So let's add our butter. And at this point, I'm gonna turn the heat down just a little bit because I don't want that butter to burn. We could kind of let this cook a little bit longer and that butter would turn brown. I'm sure you've heard of a brown butter sauce. And if we were just doing a brown butter sauce, I would say absolutely do that. But because we're making a cream sauce, we kind of want to keep the butter light. So we've got our butter. Let's add our Parmesan. Let's add our garlic powder. And then let's add our cream. This is gonna be so decadent. And we'll kind of bring that all together and we'll add the sage to finish. And then we'll get the gnocchi in the boiling water. And when it's ready, we will toss it in. Our sauce, look at how beautifully and creamy that came together. That's ready. Our gnocchi's floating, which means our gnocchi's ready. So straight out of the pasta water into that beautiful cream cheese sauce. And we'll just toss that lightly. Oh my gosh, my mouth is watering. And it smells so good with the pancetta and the sage. Now, one pot, one dish. You could just eat it as is, but I feel like to make it really a meal, we're gonna add the grilled chicken that we did earlier. So essentially what we've created here is a wonderful lunch or dinner, one pot, gnocchi, really like gnocchi mac and cheese with this beautiful Parmesan sauce, the pancetta, the sage. We'll garnish it with a little more Parmesan. You can put a couple sage leaves on to make it beautiful. And that's a full meal. For our second recipe, we're gonna make a spring risotto. So to start risotto, we are going to take our butter, put it in a pan, make sure my pan's on. About medium heat, let that butter melt. Usually you would put onion. We're gonna use leek instead of onion today. Once that butter is melted, we'll pour the risotto in. We wanna let that toast a little bit in the butter before we start adding our liquid. As we add our liquid, it is important that your liquid is heated. What happens if your liquid's cold is your arborio rice starts to absorb the liquid, and then it stops cooking when you put cold liquid back in because you gotta wait for the liquid to get hot again for the rice to absorb it. So you always wanna make sure that you're adding warm chicken stock or whatever broth you're wanting to add to your risotto to give it flavor. You always wanna make sure that that is warm. We're also gonna add some asparagus and peas because it's spring. And this, again, just like our gnocchi, you can do pretty much in one pot. I know we're using the boiling water to blanch the asparagus and the peas, and in the other one, we cook the gnocchi, but really it's kind of like a one-pot dish because we mix everything together in one pan to finish. So we'll let those leeks soften. That butter is getting melted. Let's toss in our arborio rice, which is the traditional rice in Italy they use to make risotto. Now, there are brands out there you can buy that's like an instant risotto where you bring the water to a boil, you throw your rice in, you cover it, and like in 10 or 15 minutes it's done. I don't mind those, but I think that really if you want to make a true Italian risotto, you want to make sure that you do it from scratch and you do it this way. So, the reason that you have to stir the risotto constantly is because rice is starchy. So think about making white rice. You put it in water, you let it boil, or you let it, and then let the rice absorb that water and you don't stir it, right? Because if you stir it, it gets sticky. With this dish, you want to stir it because you want to pull the starch out of the rice, and that's what gives it its creamy texture. So now that we have that toasted, we are going to deglaze with some wine. And let that wine kind of cook down. One, you're cooking out the alcohol and you're just imparting the flavors of the wine into the risotto. And second, you want that rice to start absorbing the liquid. So once you see that it's kind of all absorbed, then you can start adding your broth, probably about a cup at a time. And you're just going to continue to slowly stir while that arborio rice absorbs that liquid. So you do have to have a little bit of patience. If you can see your TV while you're doing this, you know, you can watch a little news or reality TV while you're stirring your risotto, or TikTok if you're into that. And while we're doing this, if you can, I've got boiling water over here, our asparagus and peas. Can you see how that rice is coming together and it's absorbing that liquid? So when that liquid is just about almost absorbed, we'll add more broth. To finish, we're just gonna add a little lemon zest, lemon juice. We'll add our vegetables, and then just to add a little bit more creaminess, I'm gonna put a dollop of mascarpone in here too. We've got our risotto. Risotto should be cooked al dente. Some people like it a little softer, but what al dente means is to the tooth. So it's cooked, it's creamy, but it has a little bite to it, little tooth. I'm gonna put some pecorino on here. Again, you can eat it as is, or you can add a beautiful slice of grilled chicken. If you want this recipe and the gnocchi recipe, please go to jenniferbasil.com and make sure to follow me on social media. Ciao.